What's up, guys? I'm Norb.
And I'm Mike.
And we are the Watchmen.
The men who watch.
Because if it's on a screen, we're watching it, talking about it, and sharing it with you guys.
Today's show is a brand new focus on a specific actor. And we figured there would be no other choice but to do Harrison Ford. And therefore, our title is Harrison Ford Theater.
That's right. He's the star of some of our most beloved films, and we figure instead of just talking about specific films, let's talk about the actor and the whole breadth of these amazing films he's been a part of, and some that you may not even know about because he's done a few more obscure films as well. So it'll be fun to kind of talk about the history and the legacy that is Harrison Ford in what we call Harrison Ford Theater. So we haven't planned out how we're going to approach this. It's a brand new segment, as Mike said, so I'm going to toss it to Mike and say, Mike, why don't you get it started?
And you know what? The first thing I'm honestly going to say, Norb, is that I always have done a lot of research for our shows, and I decided to this one I wasn't going to do serious research. I figured we'd wing it and see how it goes. But I do have something in mind to get right off the bat, and that's bringing out our friend Rob again and a little bit of homage to the community access shows that you and Rob both did back in the late 90s, and you appropriately had a show called Harrison Ford Theater. And I felt it fitting for maybe you to share with our audience the story and the video describing that I always remember is where you inserted Harrison Ford into E.T., I believe it was, to show how that would make a movie great rather than just so-so. But I'm going to let you describe that.
Okay, so the original Harrison Ford Theater. So yes, I've talked about my friend Rob many times, and he's been my childhood friend since kindergarten. And back in the 90s, when we were roommates, we did a public access cable show called Bert and Bert Theater. And we would once a month, I believe it was about a half an hour or 1 hour show, I can't remember, it changed from month to month, but we did a weekly entertainment thing similar to Wayne's World. And we decided to do a tribute to Harrison Ford. And our tribute was Harrison Ford Theater. And what we did is we took Harrison Ford and we played a couple of guys who were just like worshipped Harrison Ford. Everything he did was gold. Right. And our reactions to everything he would do was always, did you see that? Oh. And so what we did is we took like three movies that well-known movies, Terminator 2, E.T., and shoot, what was the last one? I can't remember what the last one was, but I know it was those two first. And we took what were famous lines spoken in those movies or acted in those movies and replaced it with Harrison Ford. So it was Terminator 2 where Arnold turns around and says, "Trust me." But instead we put Indy saying, "Trust me." And then we're like, oh, that's so much better. And then there was the scene where E.T. was in the body bag, presumably dead, and Elliot's over him crying and getting all emotional at the loss of his pal. And then we replaced Elliot and put Harrison Ford from the movie, I believe it was from the movie Witness. Or no, Witness, sorry, not Witness. It was...
Regarding Henry?
No. It was from, I believe it was Clear and Present Danger or Patriot Games, when his wife is in the hospital after being hit in a car accident, and he's crying on the window. So we put Harrison Ford in place of Elliot, and then we're like, oh, brilliant! He's the greatest ever. So that's
the part you're leaving out is before that you would always show the original scene, and both of you would go, not bad, yeah, pretty good,
right?
But let's see it this way.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it was,
Yes, we have a lukewarm reaction to the original, and then all of a sudden it was like Oscar gold after Harrison Ford did it. So yes, that's funny that you bring that up. That's the original Harrison Ford Theater from about 18 years ago. No, more than that, 27, 28 years ago. So long time ago, but good memories.
Well, we had talked a while ago about doing a show and just focus on an actor, and I mentioned Harrison Ford, and I said, Norb, we have to call it Harrison Ford Theater. And you knew why.
It was perfect. Yes. Well, so now we get to do the 2020 version of Harrison Ford Theater here on The Watchmen. So how do you want to start this, Mr. Mike Lorraine, who didn't prepare a lot of research for this show?
Well, the way I could start is I could just talk about the first time I ever saw Harrison Ford in the movie, and that would have to be Star Wars.
I think it's perfect that you start with that because it was just at the time that we're airing this show, it was just a week ago that we had the 4th of May, which of course is considered Star Wars Day with the May the 4th be with you. And so being on the heels, and I noticed, I got my little Star Wars shirt here, and so do you. So it's perfect. It's perfect to talk about Star Wars. And why not? I'm the same way. My first exposure to Harrison Ford was Star Wars. So that's a great place to start. Star Wars and his Han Solo character, one of the best characters, of course, in the entire Star Wars trilogy, or saga, actually.
And who'd have thought when Han Solo was there at the Mos Eisley Spaceport in the Cantina Bar and meets Luke Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi and Han Solo, captain of the Millennium Falcon. Who'd have thought that was going to turn into a career and lifetime of movies where I would spend a lot of time with this person. And going into that, what I would say, and not to make this a Star Wars review, but I will add that sometimes it's disappointing to have an actor play a character that's so great, and then by the time you hit Return of the Jedi, he becomes a goofball. And I don't blame Harrison Ford one bit about that. That's the director.
All right. Well, I don't want to get too much into the bashing. I do want to talk about, though, that a little bit of background, because I just recently watched the Star Wars kind of behind the scenes documentary about the Star Wars saga, and it focused a lot about the original trilogy. And what was interesting is Lucas had worked with Harrison Ford on American Graffiti. But then when it came to Star Wars, he was not actually even a choice. He wasn't even really being considered. What he was brought into was he was brought in to read lines as Han Solo for other actors to play off him. So he was like the line reader for the sides during these auditions. And what happened is the longer he kept doing it, I think he just started to kind of get a flair for the character, and they started just liking how he read the character. So I thought it was interesting how he really wasn't up for the part, and he just sort of slid into it. And it's hard to imagine anybody else playing Han Solo at this point. Yeah. There's nobody else who could have been the more perfect, Han Solo than Harrison Ford, and yet he wasn't even the guy. And it's always interesting to think, what would Han Solo have been like if it had been played by somebody else?
Well, and it's interesting you bring that up, because it's well known that Tom Selleck was supposed to be Indiana Jones.
Right.
But he couldn't do it because his bosses wouldn't let him out of Magnum PI. So he had to give it up, and Harrison Ford ended up becoming that iconic character. And I've often thought how life would have been if Tom Selleck was Indiana Jones. Would this be Tom Selleck theater?
Right. And, I think I've often pictured Tom Selleck saying some of those lines, being in some of those scenes. I could see that, actually. I could see him. He just would have the mustache, and maybe, I don't know, he would have shaved it for the show, but it would just have been Magnum P.I. Jones. And I feel like he would have been a little bit more, he was always a little bit kind of a comical guy. A little bit, there was always kind of, a little slapsticky way about him that would have been more just a little more sillier than Harrison Ford would have been. At least that's how I've always imagined it. But I think about it for a while, and then I go, I think a mustache would have bugged me. Nah, put Harrison Ford back in there. That's who he belongs. But yes, Tom Selleck clearly would have been, could have been close, could have been the guy. It was very close to a point where he might have been the Indiana Jones. And glad it worked out the way it did, because he's the best. Harrison Ford's just the best, man.
Well, and what I'll say about Harrison Ford when it comes to these iconic movies, everybody knows him as Indiana Jones, Han Solo. Mm-hmm. So many great characters. And as I was thinking about the show this morning, I was thinking about probably one of the most impressive moments I've had observing Harrison Ford as the actor in a film do something that I thought would be very difficult, but it's not what you think. It's not a hard stunt. But it was in the movie Working Girl. I don't know if you remember that movie very much. But there was a scene where he's on the phone. Do you remember? He's on the phone and he's changing his shirt.
With all the women in the background watching him, right?
And I was impressed with, as the actor, Harrison Ford's ability to take off his shirt, be on a corded phone, and pull a brand new dress shirt out and unfold it, take the pins out and all that, and put it on all while he's talking to someone. That's like patting your head and rubbing your tummy at the same time. Very hard thing to do, and yet he made it look really cool.
What's great about that scene too is before he puts the shirt on, I think he wipes his armpits off with some napkin or something, or the other shirt he takes off. The other shirt he takes and wipes his armpits off. And the best part is to enhance that scene is all the women in the office are like looking through the window watching, of course, and they're all kind of oogling over him. And then he puts the shirt on and he turns around, realizes they're watching, and they all start clapping. And then he does this kind of reaction, which is great. It's like total Harrison Ford, like, ta-da. But he keeps character and stays with it. That was a great moment in that scene. I agree. That's not easy to do, to change. That's like a brand new shirt in a package. So I'm imagining every time he messes up, he's got to start over, get a new shirt in there. So that was pretty impressive. I wonder how many takes it took for him to do that, but very natural, very well done.
Yeah, that's where I would give him major props, because I think that's a difficult thing to do. So a question I have for you, Norb, is when it comes to other Harrison Ford movies, and I've thought a lot about, and we've talked about when there's the Harrison Ford actor that plays a character kind of really quiet, and then there's the, hey, it's me, the excited Harrison Ford. And I've always liked the excited Harrison Ford more than the quiet Harrison Ford that we see probably a little all too often that I would prefer in films. But a movie I have never seen that I really would like to is The Mosquito Coast. And that looks like the Harrison Ford I would enjoy, because in the previews, I remember he seemed like an excited, eccentric character. But have you seen that movie?
I did see it long time ago. It feels like a long time ago. It was 1986. I didn't see it in the theater. We had a beta copy. Back then, we illegally copied videos. We'd rent them on VHS and copy them to beta, or vice versa, because Macrovision didn't work if you went from VHS to beta. Little trick you probably didn't know. So I remember I returned from being an exchange student to Japan. I came back and my parents bought this new beta hi-fi VCR. And I was like, ooh, hi-fi, what does that mean? And I didn't realize how awesome this would be, because instead of the normally hissy, noisy audio tracks that VHS and regular beta had, hi-fi meant you had audio that's on the helical scanning heads, so the audio was like CD quality. And that was one of the few movies that we had. It was Mosquito Coast in a beta copy on hi-fi. So the sound was awesome. But I watched this movie, and I've only watched it once because it didn't have a high rewatchability factor. It was kind of a strange movie. It was not the Harrison Ford kind of movie that I was expecting to see. He was kind of a quirky character, if I recall. It was a little bit of a darker movie. So it was one that you as a Harrison Ford fan, you should watch just to see it in this context of a movie that not too many people know about. It was not one that I walked away going, that was awesome. I want to see it again. It was just, I don't know. I remember feeling just not a good feeling at the end of it. It was a little bit of a downer. So yeah, not my favorite of the dark Harrison Ford movies, but I like the fact that you segued to it, because it brings up a couple movies I feel like are not as well known commercially, and I feel like they're underrated. And there's two movies I like to mention that are the sort of more subdued Harrison Ford movies, and that's the movie Witness, I believe came out in 1985, and then Presumed Innocent, which came out a few years later. Witness, I don't remember if he got nominated for that one, but that was a really good movie. And this is the story of Harrison Ford is this cop, and he ends up getting caught up in this sort of, there was bad things going on behind the scenes of the police force, and so he gets shot, and he's brought out to this Amish village where he has to sort of blend in for a while he's laying low, hiding out from the police. But that was an amazing movie, and the way that Harrison Ford played that, the fish out of water thing, I thought that was a really good one. And so a lot of people I think have seen that, but one I felt that they got kind of Oscar screwed out of was the movie Presumed Innocent. And that, I think, was the timing thing. They released that movie at a bad time. They released it right after the Oscars came out that year. So it was one of those movies that just got lost, because sometimes movies come out right before Oscar season, so it's fresh in your mind. Yeah. Well, this is one of those ones that was released way too early, so everybody forgot about it. But this is a courtroom drama. And Harrison Ford is really good in it. And it's dark, it's heavy, it's got kind of a twist end and everything. One of my favorite underrated Harrison Ford movies that I think doesn't get enough love for his performance in that one.
Presumed Innocent came out during a time where there was a well-known author named John Grisham, and he was an attorney that became a writer. So he started writing a lot of books about court cases and court drama. And it was during that time there were a lot of John Grisham books getting made into movies like The Firm, with Tom Cruise. Presumed Innocent was another one.
Yeah, there's a bunch.
It's interesting to look back and think about how there's just trends. And the trend was John Grisham books were 90s. Hot movie gold at that time.
There were tons of 90s courtroom movies based on John Grisham books, but helped a lot of stars.
A funny memory I have about Presumed Innocent, which is a good film, it's more of an off-wall memory, but during the time that came out on VHS tape, I was working during the summer at a hotel in Yakima as a bellman. And at that point, the hotels were showing movies in rooms that they had a little catalog of movies you could watch, and they were free of staying there. But the way they worked is behind the front desk, there was a VHS player that was hooked to a distribution amplifier that would DA the movie into all the rooms. And so the guide would say, Presumed Innocent at 8 p.m. Well, it only started at 8 p.m. if the bellman put the VHS tape in the deck and hit play.
Not the sophisticated on-demand digital system we have today.
And there was a few times where the front desk would call me and said, "You need to start the movie. Somebody's calling."
That's funny.
So I have such a memory of constantly seeing the first shot of Presumed Innocent, which was the shot of the 12 jury chairs on the screen, because that was always after I started the movie. And then you'd hear the we are the jury monologue. I can't remember how it went, but it would show the 12 chairs, and then you had this monologue, which is taken from the Grisham book. But that's my Presumed Innocent memory.
That's hilarious. You've seen the movie, though, right? Not just the first 10 seconds, but that's hilarious.
Yeah, if you talk about Bonnie Bedelia from Die Hard, Presumed Innocent is the second movie I think of her in. Yeah. She plays a surprising character with a shock ending.
Yeah, she was the wife of Harrison Ford in that movie. So, yep, that's a good one. Underrated movie that deserves more love. But he's Harrison Ford has continued, from his Indiana Jones time. He did so many movies, and I did the only research I did on this is I wanted to make sure I had a list of all his movies, because some I never saw, some I've seen and loved, some I saw and didn't care too much about it. But there was a lot of action movies that he did that people know well, like Patriot Games and Clear and Present Danger. He kind of more or less plays himself in that. There was The Fugitive, which was an amazing, awesome movie with Tommy Lee Jones. That's one of his best, the early 90s.
Yeah, but
movies.
You're leaving out your favorite, Norm.
Oh, I'm not there
Clearly,
yet.
Air Force One.
I was getting to that.
See, we think alike.
Wait, but Air Force One, I liked the movie. I know where I'm getting to on this one, but Air Force One was great. I mean, he's playing the president. I mean, anytime you could play the president of the United States, I mean, how cool would this nation be if we had Harrison Ford as the president? I mean, that's about as cool as it gets. But, so the movie itself was good. It was a lot of good action sequences, but oh my gosh, the ending of that movie where Air Force One has to crash land into the ocean has got to be the worst special effects ever done for a movie that was such a big star. I mean, tell me I'm wrong, but I can't even watch that and try to convince myself that this is even halfway decent. It's like suddenly they went to like a high school 3D animation class and had the airplane crash in there. So terrible, because we've seen so many movies back in the 70s when they used to put models and fly them into the ocean. At least you knew they were models, but at least they kind of looked real. This was just terrible animation. Hard to watch. Such a disappointing end to a pretty good movie.
Speaking of that, that's a great segue into the last movie Harrison Ford did, which
I
is
knew you were gonna do that.
Call of the Wild. And, I have to, I try to sometimes paint pictures in my head of how things go. And Harrison Ford is the kind of actor that if he agrees to do a movie, the movie gets made. And a lot of movies I don't think are made until Harrison Ford agrees to do it. And Call of the Wild, I can look at it one of those that once Harrison Ford decided he would do that movie, that everybody goes bananas, that all of a sudden the money's there, everything moves forward, green light. And I'm imagining Harrison showing up on set, says hi, pleasantries are exchanged, says, okay, where's Rover? I want to meet the dog. Oh, it's going to be a CG dog. You're going to, there's this guy in this green suit who's pretending to be a dog. You're just going to pet him. And I can only imagine what went through his mind. This is a traditional old school actor who's worked with animals. Can you just imagine what he's thinking? And he's probably thinking, oh man, this sucks. Well, okay, I'll just dial in my character. I'll do what I'm paid for, but
I get so mad. I literally get mad when I see trailers for that film. I will not watch that film. I'm sorry. I won't either. I'm gonna put my protest right here, my virtual protest. I refuse to see that movie as much as I love Harrison Ford because that animated dog pisses me off. It pisses me off that they would allow Harrison Ford to probably perform great, and it's going to be ruined by every shot that dog appears in, and that they couldn't just do what so many other movies have done for years and either put a real dog in there and just move the mouth or get a real freaking dog. But go with a full CG dog with the fake eyes that are like over animated, and it's like, why would you do that? It's such a waste. And it might be a good movie. It might be a good script. It might be good acting by Harrison Ford, but that dog kills the whole thing. And it's just a shame that that whoever made that decision was probably the worst decision you could have made, sir, or madame, whoever made that decision. Awful.
And to further my conversation, when Harrison Ford shows up on set and says, where's Rover? Oh, we're going to use a CG dog. It's going to be like Life of Pi. You saw Life of Pi, right? It's going to look awesome. It's going to be so believable. And I'm watching that trailer with my kids, and both of them turned to me and said, that dog looks fake.
Yeah.
And right there, fail.
I don't understand. In this day and age, when you expect the technology should be just only getting better, you should never regress to a level of quality where it's worse than where we were before.
Somehow, and The Call of the Wild was required reading when you and I were growing up. That was considered one of the top 10 books that you had to read. And it's a travesty that they took that great, wonderful story about a companionship and a dog. And I'll say again, there's a lot of dog movies out there. We're going to do another show on a dog movie later on that had a real dog, and it was just fine. So, Unfortunately, Harrison Ford, I'm sure he's focused on the next film right now.
He's probably at some point he said, well, I'm getting paid. Let's get through this thing.
Indiana Jones 5. So what did you think of Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? That's a tricky question because we were all excited for him to come back as Indiana Jones, but he's an old man now. And did he pull it off, Norb?
And I thought that would be the biggest issue, is how I'm going to be able to accept Indiana Jones as an old man, Grandpa Jones. But that wasn't the problem with Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There was so many other problems. Indiana Jones's age was the least of them. And I say this because we brought up my buddy Rob many times in this show, and today, of course. And my buddy Rob actually kind of likes that movie, which this is one of the few times we completely are on opposite ends of the spectrum.
And Rob feels really sorry for you and me. And he constantly, when I bring it up, he'll joke, yeah, that disc you had to buy with the rest of that Indiana Jones collection, that'll probably be a really good coaster for your drinks, huh? Or maybe go play Frisbee in the backyard with Rover.
Yeah.
So he knows that it didn't work for us.
Well, and in the a lot of it is context, because obviously with Raiders of the Lost Ark, which I consider adventure movie perfection almost, Indiana Jones, it's got some parts that aren't great, but I love sections of that movie as well. We talked about it before. The Last Crusade, okay, a few moments, a lot of not so great moments, but you still felt like, okay, you have to watch the third one, and then
save
the fourth
that for a future show, right? We could do a show on every Indiana Jones film.
Yeah, but then the fourth one, not to go on it and not spoil what we can talk about later in much more depth. The fourth one, the combination of the expectation, because this thing was years in the making. I can't remember how many years, over a decade, right? Plus in making. But just the stuff they did in that movie that was insulting to the intelligence. First of all, nuclear bomb, survival in a refrigerator. I had to roll my eyes on that.
That developed the famous saying, nuke the fridge. That's what you say whenever you do something completely ridiculously implausible.
Exactly. So that just got it started. But I think really the reason why that movie, besides that, and then the whole alien thing, was just, this does not belong in an Indiana Jones movie. some of the characters, bringing Marion back. Marion was just this sort of comical shell of herself in grandma mode. It was just not enjoyable to watch them together. But I think the worst thing of all was that when it comes to that movie, even in Last Crusade, there are moments where you could go, okay, fast forward. Okay, this is a good part. I'll watch this. This is good. There is not a single scene in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that I would want to watch again. Every action sequence had something really annoying about it. The digital monkeys, the digital ants. Again, bad digital
gophers.
Digital gophers to open the show right away sets a bad tone.
Well, we're going down a road where we need to just save this for our Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull review show, because I think we should do one. But, Norb, I want to know, what are your predictions for Indiana Jones 5? Because Harrison Ford has agreed to do it. It's going to happen. It's a little bit delayed now because of the current situation in the world, but it's going to happen. So, what are your predictions for Indiana Jones 5? Is it going to come back around for you?
You know what happens? Once the bar gets lowered so much because of a bad, disappointing experience, you don't try to raise it again. This has happened many times in Star Wars, where you had these hopes, and once you get, it's like, okay, so much for hoping for that. My bar is so low that I think I'm going to have to like this movie, because I'm expecting it to be like one of the worst movies ever made. So if it's anything better than Crystal Skull, I'm going to probably love it. But I do not have any hopes that this is going to blow my mind, because I had hopes that they took so long. You thought they'd finally get the perfect script, because you heard all these stories about the scripts that were rejected because it wasn't the right story, and they had to wait for the perfect time when everybody was available, and then they come up with this crap. So I'm at the point where now it's like, if he just shows up and whips his whip around, fights a few guys,
be happy.
Throws some punches, I'm good. Leave the digital stuff out and just have Harrison Ford beat a bunch of guys up. And it'll probably have to be a stunt man, because he'll be really old by then. And it'll be, his face digitally attached to somebody. But I'm okay with that, because that's what you love Harrison Ford for. Bullwhip, punching, and guns. And some truck chases. That's all I need. And a bunch of bad guys.
Another movie I really liked Harrison Ford in was Ender's Game. And that was based on a book by Orson Scott Card that I think every person that I was friends with in college was all reading at the same time, all my dorm brothers and everyone. And it was a great, great story. And I was super excited when they finally made it in a movie. And I enjoyed seeing Harrison Ford in that film. I don't know what you thought of that movie itself, but I was happy with it. It did good enough justice to the book to work for me.
I remember more, my memory of that movie is more of remembering your build up to it, because you used to talk about being excited to see the movie because you'd read that. So I was like, this will be kind of interesting. I saw it, and there's definitely no Crystal Skull negative reaction. It wasn't, Presumed Innocent or Indiana Jones either. It was somewhere in the middle where I saw it. I remember thinking, okay, this is okay. But then once it was done, it was kind of forgettable for me. So it didn't really move mountains for me. I recall what my vague memory of how he was Harrison Ford was solid. I was like, okay, this is, you're always kind of evaluating what kind of version of Harrison Ford are we getting in this show? Is he going to be a Han Solo-ish Harrison Ford? Is he going to be what's going on today version? Or is he going to be somewhere in between? And I thought he was fine. He was like older, okay Harrison Ford. So it's on my kind of that mediocre list of, I saw it and it was all right, but certainly not on my top 10.
So moving into the worst Harrison Ford performance of all time, I was trying to think of what that would be, and I haven't seen every single Harrison Ford production ever made, but I can think of the worst Harrison Ford performance, and it was probably the worst because I think he wanted to be somewhere else, and he didn't care and he dialed in, but that would absolutely have to be Happy Life Day from the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Oh, gosh. I was like, where are you going with this? Like, you're going to go there.
And I recently showed you a little of that. And, being made the Star Wars Day yesterday in our Star Wars shirts, I think Star Wars Holiday Special deserves a little bit of screen time. But do you remember how bad he was in that?
Everything was bad in that. To refresh people's memories, because this is a very narrow audience that we're probably reaching here. So this was Star Wars had come out. They came out with this. They rushed this Christmas special that was an hour long, 2 hours. I don't know. It was an hour and a half too long, but it was shown on TV. And the hype for that is you and I, as kids who couldn't get any visuals of Star Wars, saw this was coming and thought we were so amped up that this would be the greatest thing on TV we'd ever seen. And instead, at that time, it was bad and disappointing to us at that age. And if it's disappointing when you're 7 or 8 years old, you know it's a piece of garbage. So recently you found it on YouTube and we watched that thing and oh my gosh, it was so bad on so many levels. And yeah, the worst part is when you're seeing all your favorite characters, Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, and of course, Harrison Ford in this thing which itself brought them down because they looked so bad just being in it. It was painful. It's like watching a bad soap opera mixed in with Sesame Street, with a really bad soundtrack and some bad songs. Oh, look it up. Look it up on YouTube. What's it called? This is
the Star Wars Holiday Special.
Star Wars Holiday Special.
It's about an hour and a half and painful to watch and painful to see actors like Harrison Ford in this thing. And obviously it was a contract requirement or something, but another Harrison Ford movie that was a surprise for me was 6 Days, 7 Nights.
I was going to bring that one up. That was one I was totally agreeing with you. I felt like we'd seen a bunch of the mellow Harrison Fords come out. And I thought, you know what? I think he's done. I think he's just done playing swashbuckling, wise guy, Han Solo type characters. And then this came out. I was like, there he is. There's Han Solo. He's back in this sort of survival adventure movie.
Yeah, they excited Harrison Ford, the guy with that energy that you like.
Who's kind of a smart aleck and stuff. I love that movie. I haven't seen it. I've probably seen it maybe a couple times. Came out on video, so I don't think I saw it in a theater. But I really liked it. It was, like you said, low expectations. I think I thought it was going to be sort of goofy and campy, and it was actually a really good movie.
Well, and it's well known Harrison Ford is a pilot. He flies small planes, and the way they talked him into doing that movie is they gave him the plane that they used in that movie as an enticement. Again, if you can get Harrison Ford to do a movie, you make the movie.
It's going to get made, right?
So they gave him the plane, and he had really good chemistry with his co-star. I can't remember her name off the top of my head right now.
She was blonde.
But they had good chemistry. I remember that as well. But that's a highly recommended Harrison Ford film if you haven't seen that one. And that's not one, I think, at the top of everybody's list when it comes to just thinking about Harrison Ford films. And
it's funny that you say chemistry because if I'm not mistaken, the actress is lesbian in that show. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I remember in my mind thinking, oh, wow, they're kind of building this up as a romance between the two of them, but she doesn't like guys. So they're really doing a good job of creating this chemistry on screen. So fact check me if I'm wrong, but I do believe that is the case, but you can see it for yourself if you look up the info on the internet. Trying to think there's another surprise. I unfortunately I didn't really watch this whole thing. This was one of those movies that just sort of came up while I was doing some house cleaning. But did you see Cowboys and Aliens?
I did.
Okay,
I did see it.
I never saw it. I think for some reason I thought the title just sounded goofy to me, and it was one of those times when I just wasn't watching a lot of movies at that time, and it was one that I just didn't go out of my way to see, and I missed it. But it was on TV recently, and me and my wife were kind of watching this going, this is actually pretty good. And I thought it was supposed to be like this sort of silly movie, and it was actually very heavy action, kind of serious, and that was a surprise. I missed that one, and it was a pretty good movie. But what did you think of it?
Yeah, I liked it. I saw it in the theater, and I liked the score. I remember it had a really cool opening score song, and it's got Daniel Craig, Harrison Ford, two A-list actors, very good at their craft, and it was one of those. It was almost like watching a comic book story, just done really well. So I liked it.
Yeah. No, that's a very, very recent discovery just in the last couple days that it totally missed my radar. But, there was a lot of movies I think that missed the radar for me and a lot of other people. But, there's some movies that I think of that I went through the list of his filmography and just noted the ones that I never took a glance at. But see if you saw any of these. Random Hearts, Kate 19, The Widowmaker, Sabrina.
I feel like I saw it, but I can't remember. Sabrina.
There's a submarine. Sabrina, I think that had a time in there. Firewall, Hollywood Homicide, Extraordinary Measures, Paranoia, Crossing Over. I never saw any of those films, but
I think those came during the time where I didn't have a lot of money. I was a broke college student.
It was definitely 90s and during a time when I was seeing movies then, but I didn't go out of my way to see those. There was just a time when Harrison Ford was kind of pumping them out. But when
I was looking at the list of his movies, I didn't realize he was in The Expendables 3. And I forgot
about that too. I know.
I thought I need to see The Expendables 3. I'd kind of like to see it now that Harrison Ford's in it.
There's a lot of guys sharing action time on that one, so his role might have been very tiny. I can't remember now. I think I saw that. I don't recall. Maybe it was one of those days I needed a 5-hour energy.
I took my youngest son, Kyle, to see The Secret Life of Pets 2. And I didn't done any research on that movie before we went. I just knew that he wanted to see it, and I said, sure, we'll go. And there was this dog character named Rooster that when he started talking right away, I thought that has got to be Harrison Ford because his voice is recognizable. Even in the gravelly state it's in these days, and I was right. It was Harrison Ford voiced the character Rooster in that movie. So he's even doing animated films.
One thing that Harrison Ford, he's been a great actor in a lot of movies. One thing he has never been particularly good at is narrating shows. He narrated the show. It was actually behind the scenes of Raiders of the Lost Ark called Great Movie Stunts, Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he narrated it, and it's just...
He sounds tired.
He sounds tired. He wasn't even tired then. I mean, he was only a year removed from the movie, like 1982. But I remember he's just not a good on-camera delivery guy. Very monotone. They showed the boulder scene, and he comes on screen. Looked pretty scared in that scene, didn't I? Well, I'd have been crazy not to, because it was like 800 pounds of plaster to make it roll right, and if I tripped, could have been in big trouble. Anyway, the whole show was narrated like that, and you kind of get used to it. It was like, Harrison, okay, you're a great actor. Maybe leave the voiceover to somebody else. But oh yeah, it's good memories. And there's so many other movies. There's those older ones, like I saw American Graffiti, but I've seen some scenes from Hanover Street. I never watched Force 10 from Navarone. The Frisco Kid, never saw it. But these are older films that, at some point we have to do a review on some of these because they're kind of like old classic ones.
Well, you know how we did Bridge over the River Kwai? I would like to do Apocalypse Now, and the reason is because I never saw that movie, and it's one of the, what? You haven't seen Apocalypse Now? How can you be a filmmaker? Well, I missed it at the time because my parents would never have let me see that movie, and it was one of those that never got rented on VHS, and I never saw, and he's in that. So I think you've seen Apocalypse Now, right?
A long time ago. I have very scattered memories of it, but I think
that's one we should do a show on.
Yeah.
So I can watch it and give my thoughts, because I know that movie there's a lot of reasons behind that movie why it's famous, not just from the actors in it, but just the whole making of it.
There's a documentary, Heart of Darkness, that is a must watch. I remember being told about it, and particularly it was the scene with Martin Sheen, and it drives him almost to the point of having a heart attack or something. It's really heavy. So that's one of the highlights, or the memorable moments in the making of the depths they went to make that film.
Well, and I love documentaries, but I can't watch that yet because I got to see the movie first.
Right. So that's right. All the more reason to have to check that out very soon. One quick note, just as bringing back to Harrison Ford as Han Solo to our Star Wars, where we began. I think one of the coolest parts of something he contributed as a character was the original scene in Empire Strikes Back where he's lowered into the carbonite and Princess Leia says, "I love you." And I think the original line said something like, "Well, you better remember that because I'm going to be back, or I'll be back." It was something very, la 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 la. But I believe it was Harrison Ford who came up with the I know. And that's one of the best quoted lines from Harrison Ford in all of the trilogies. That 2 words spoken so appropriately at the perfect time when you don't expect something like that to come out. But it's so Han Solo. It's so
fitting with his character.
And he nailed it. It was perfect swashbuckling line coming out of the actor. So one of the awesome contributions as a rewriter of the script to make one of the best moments in the Star Wars trilogy. So good.
Well, I feel like I've said enough for the show. If you've got anything else that you've got to say, but I'm pleased with what we've talked about. I think there was some interesting things there. It was a new thing for us to try doing a show like this where we really didn't have a specific plan. We just figured we'd talk about him and talk about his movies. So
yeah, and it was actually fun to talk about some of the less known movies because everybody knows about Star Wars and Indiana Jones, but to talk about some of the ones that not everybody has seen and maybe give people a reminder out there that go look these up because you might be missing out on a little gem here worth checking out. So
and Harrison Ford's the kind of actor. He's the kind of actor that he's been with us our whole life in movies, and so when you see him in something, it is like seeing an old friend of yours, even though he doesn't know us, and if we were to say hi to him on the street, he'd be like, leave me alone, who are you?
Right.
But he's an old friend. When you see him in a movie, there's already a familiarity and comfort level when it comes to Harrison Ford. You know it's gonna, I guess I should say, you think there's a good chance it's gonna be good. Except Call of the Wild. I'm not going to give that one a chance. And unfortunately, however good his performance might be, it's going to be wasted because of his co-star, bad digital co-star. But well, you say old friend, and he's definitely an old friend. You know, every time I see him, he's getting older all the time. But we know that that's all natural. Harrison Ford is not the nip and tuck, try to fake his way into old age and try to beat Father Time. What you see is what you get with Harrison Ford. Well, wrinkles, the good thing jowls, and all that. Good thing is in most movies he can wear a beard, and I really liked your description of why old actors wear beards. You said it's clothes for your face.
Yep, covers a lot. Hides the fat, hides the wrinkles. It's great if you can grow one.
So for the surprise, I have collected various toys. I used to go to a toy store and just browse the collectibles, almost like an antique shop of toys. And there was one in the Seattle area I would visit a lot. And I picked this up. It's a Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark Harrison Ford figure, and it's got the gold idol. You can see the gold idol right there. And the hard part is it'd be fun to take him out and pose him, but whenever you take stuff out of the package, it loses its value, and that's always the trade-off. I will say this was about $10. And before the show, I looked it up on eBay, and it's worth about $10.
So much about losing the value.
But there isn't another one I have. This is his Temple of Doom character that I also picked up, and it's got the top secret crate and his knife and his Temple of Doom outfit. And of course, as you know, I really like Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. There's his whip. So thought I would just share those couple little Harrison Ford action figures that I have as part of my collection.
All right. Well, there you go. So there's our first ever Harrison Ford Theater. Well, launching out the theater series here, but Harrison Ford Theater. So that wraps up the show. But before we sign off, I just want to thank you guys for watching. Those of you watching on YouTube, we appreciate your support. Please like the video, subscribe, hit that notification bell because it really helps us out. And for those of you listening on podcasts, please continue to do so. And if you guys have any ideas or shows, actors, games, TV programs you'd like us to talk about, send us a message in the comments or email us, and we'd be happy to do so. I'm Norb.
And I am Mike.
And we are The Watchmen.
Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching The Watchmen.
Please click on here to watch other episodes, and be sure to hit that like button too.
And please subscribe and hit that notification bell. That way you'll always be alerted to any future episodes.
It really helps us out, and we appreciate it.
We'll see you next time. And remember, we'll be watching.